today we're gonna talk a bit about why it's important to get started with ResearchOps early on. So to get started, it's important that we align on what we mean when we talk about ResearchOps. And the way I see ResearchOps, I mean, there are plenty of definitions out there, but the way I see it is that ResearchOps is basically the infrastructure that sets research in motion. In other words, it could also be explained as everything around the research except the research itself, or everything that will allow or help research happen. So ResearchOps is great, everything is amazing, it can be super powerful, but what is the problem that we face from ResearchOps? That most companies do not invest in ResearchOps. That's a sad fact. I don't know how many of you would say that your company or your team invest whether time, effort, and money in ResearchOps. Probably not many, I can guess. But the problem is not just investing. The problem is also that most companies do not invest in ResearchOps early enough. And that makes a lot of difference because there are, okay, there may be some companies investing there, but when are they investing? And there are many here, I don't want to say misconceptions. I would rather go for the word myths or fuzzy ideas that, for example, ResearchOps is for large teams only. Yeah, we have to admit that ResearchOps is mostly present in large organizations. Maybe when you have a lot of researchers or people who are doing research, or maybe have a large structure that usually, same with design, it's usually the case for ResearchOps, but that's actually not true. It's, of course, they probably have a larger budget, they probably have different possibilities, but this is not the case. And actually, I would go completely in the opposite way of this, and actually I think that ResearchOps can benefit even a company with one researcher, for example, or even if you want to bring someone ResearchOps before a researcher, it can also be beneficial. So that's one of the first misconceptions or myths, as I said, that we find. Then another one we find is we can tackle those topics later on. And with those topics, what I mean is a repository, streamlining recruitment processes, and talking about the job description of a researcher, frameworks for working, prioritizing. We can take care of that later on. And another point, we don't need to worry about this, but just focus on the research now. That's also a common quote that comes across when you face this. Is like, okay, now focus on the actual hands-on work, and we can think of that later. And this is where all these projects get deprioritized. So this also aligns with the not early enough. So the thing is that many people think that ResearchOps is something different, it's something special, it's something that you need certain requirements or you need to put into shape. But actually, if there's research, there is ResearchOps. Those things go hand in hand. So if there's research happening at your company, there is ResearchOps. Maybe there's nothing is polished, nothing is structured, nothing is actually, let's say, streamlined or organized, but there is. The fact that you haven't worked in it yet, or the fact that you're not spending or you're not working on that doesn't mean it doesn't exist. So these things go hand in hand. And this applies to everything. If you go to the products ops world or the design ops world, it's the same. The fact that the activity is happening doesn't mean the operational side is not happening. Both things are part of one. And this is something that we need to keep in mind, because as I said before, if we think of large teams only, later on, we don't need ResearchOps right now. Actually, ResearchOps is happening when research starts at a company. And then we can also open that door and say, okay, when does research start at a company? When does it start? When we hire the first researcher? Does it start when other people are conducting some sort of research? There are some authors that even say that it starts when the founders or the founding team are looking for product market fit, or they're trying to do some customer discovery, customer development, and trying to find a place for their idea for a company. That's where research starts. So if we think in those terms, we can really track the beginning of research even lesser quality or unorganized, there. That's also why ResearchOps is or should be present from the start. So when should you actually start thinking of ResearchOps? Well, let's do this really simple exercise. As I said, we should start as early as possible. And with this simple math, I can explain why. So when research is happening, you have a lot of things going on. You have to get participants, you produce insights, you have to care about many things. You know, there are a lot of things. As if we go back to the definition, all the things that put research in motion. So when you're starting out, you have less things, let's say, floating around. So let's do this simple exercise. Let's imagine, I know this is a bit of dumb math. It's a little bit of a stupid calculation. And of course, it's not real because it's never straightforward and linear. But let's imagine just for a second, follow me on this one, that per research project, you need 10 participants. One researcher per project needs 10 participants and produces 5 insights. So when you have 2 researchers, it becomes 20 participants, 10 insights. Or when you do 2 projects, it's 20 and 10, 30 and 15, you know, and so on and so on and so on. So if you think of ResearchOps as something that would streamline and organize and build infrastructure to contain and make everything more efficient and more effective, when do you think is better to start? When you have to get 10 participants and have to deal with 5 insights, or 20 and 10, or when you have this, when you have to maybe recruit for a lot of people, handle all those insights, put that into place, make those insights actionable, update them, triangulate. When do you think is better to start? You do the math and you will see that early on is the right way. And this will also change the game later on. The earlier you start, the stronger your foundations are. And then, of course, as you go and as you grow and as you scale, you can add many things and you can polish many things, but start early on. So why is ResearchOps important? Well, setting up your infrastructure really early on will set you up for success. And this goes in line with what I just said. If you put strong foundations in place, then everything you build on top of that will be easier, will be more effective, and will be more efficient. Early on, less overhead if you want. Of course, you probably have less resources, but yeah, you need to deal with that. But this will then help you out scale in the long run. It will set you up for success because then you can focus on other things. You know, when you are, especially, and this is the case when you are the first researcher, you need to balance a little bit between, okay, what kind of work do I do? Do I do more hands-on research or let's say research per se kind of work, or do I spend time building the infrastructure or the platform so we can build a research practice on top of that? So how do you split that? That's why when you divide, I recommend you to also put a lot of love and allocate a lot of capacity, at least half of your capacity, to building the infrastructure later on. The thing is, ResearchOps is the key to scale your research practice overall. And with research practice, and going back to the case of the first researcher or when you are part of a small team, what do we mean with scaling a practice? You know, scaling a practice can be, on one hand, scaling the size of a team. So making a team that maybe starts with 2-3 people to 7, 8, 9, 10 researchers. This will then help you with all this juggling of output and needs and things like moving pieces better. But also it can mean that you need to support people who maybe are not researchers in consuming research, conducting certain research, and maybe handle tooling, for example. So when you think of a practice, what do we think of as a research practice? So do we consider just the research team, or do we think of something a little bit more across, I mean, the research team and other teams across the organization, meaning insight producing teams? So I'm more for the second group. So having all insight teams connected somehow. So that would make the research practice, every team that has touch points with the customer or has any sort of input from their side would be considered in this group of inside teams. So if you want to scale and you want to create actually a better understanding, or if you want to create the threads and the connecting vessels for a better learning structure, this is what can help you out. So ResearchOps will help you connect all those things up outside the research team and will help you scale, as I said, the team on one side, and then the overall knowledge or the overall capacity for learning across the organizations. So what things can you invest, or what do I mean when I talk about investing in ResearchOps? Well, it's time, effort, and money. I know some of this actually kind of, okay, time is money. You also have an effort means maybe human resources, so that's also money. But I try to put them separately because I kind of think of them with different flavors. So with time, I mean, okay, we spend time in terms of, okay, we say, okay, we take 6 months or we take a year in building this. I thought in terms of how many people are working there. Let's say we have one person or 2 people or 3 people actually spending, or allocating capacity for that. And with money, I mean budget that maybe is used for tools. Let's say you wanna, you need a repository and you wanna work with Condens, for example. Okay, you need to invest in getting the tool, in getting the seeds, and getting maybe a training. So that's the money part. I know all of these can be connected or tracked down to money, but I want to make this distinction. So time would be the time frame or the overall capacity extended in time they want to invest. Effort is how many people we want working on that, and how many hours also. I mean, it's also connected to the first one. And then money, how much money are we spending in the overall structure in terms of incentives, in terms of tools, in terms of courses, in terms of what? So how can you get started with ResearchOps? Let's say you now go back to your teams tomorrow, or to your manager or to the CEO of the company and say, okay, fine, we really need to work on ResearchOps. So how do we get started? So here there are 3 ways I see moving forward. I'm gonna go over each of them and focus particularly on the last one, which is the usual case. But second and third are the usual cases, but let's go through all of them. The first one is externalizing the work, meaning there are agencies popping up lately. I've seen some agencies and some freelancers working on this. So you externalize the work, meaning you hire a third party outside your organization that will handle maybe the whole operation side, or maybe part of your operations, or maybe just a little bit, depending on how these people work. Let's say you want to hire an agency for the recruitment part. Okay, fine, you can find that. You can have fractional ops agencies doing, okay, we just help you build this, and then we have certain ownership on those topics. So this is the first case. So you go and you pay someone outside your org to do this. This is considerably expensive if you want. So these agencies are not cheap. And also, I mean, you have to take into account that these are third parties. So you will have information outside your organization that will be handling also internal knowledge and customer knowledge outside your organization, also outside your control. And also be mindful that whatever they build might not stay in your context. So maybe you hire an agency to build something for you, to build a repo, to build a, and if you decide to maybe cut ties with these agencies, maybe you don't end up with that inside your org. But it's the fastest way for getting ops up and running. So these agencies normally have the know-how, have the resources, also have the scale to say, okay, fine, we implement this and that. Really, in less than a quarter, you have a lot of the operational needs that you might have covered. So this is always, you need to balance and decide which way is best for you. And then we have the second case, which is hiring an ops specialist. And this I deeply encourage, because that would be great if you have the money and also the headcount. This is a great option. This requires a long-term commitment, long-term investment, long-term strategy, because this will be betting on the long game. Let's say you want to build the operations, so you say, okay, fine, we need to bring someone in to build this a year from now, or maybe 2 years from now. So it will take time, it will take money, but then everything stays within your context. All the information stays within your domain. So that's good. It also requires headcount approval and also budget, but most likely way less budget than number one. So really, if you wanna, this is actually the best version of all three, or the best option of all three, because you're directly opting for operations. And then we have the third one, which is dividing the load. And with dividing the load, I mean splitting the operational work or the building of the operations within the existing team. And this could be between different researchers, maybe within a research manager and part of the team. Maybe this is also mixed with, if you have one of these mixed models where you also have maybe designers or product managers conducting certain research, it could also be split within that group. So there are many things to consider here. You can start first. Also, you need to pick who's gonna tackle what. You need to say, okay, how much capacities can we allocate to this? You need to consider that if you have people who maybe have to juggle operational work and other type of work, you need to say, okay, the time that they are spending doing, let's say, research is building the repositories, time they're not researching, or if they're streamlining a process, they're not researching, or they're maybe not designing in some cases. So we need to be pretty mindful of this. And also there's this thing that there's this also feeling that if we put more people, okay, maybe we have more researchers, and then we say, okay, fine, each of you takes a little bit. It's not so straightforward. This is not something that you can divide just like that. In some cases, as I said, it can also be share or split with the manager. I've been a research manager, and I have to say that it's not really the case in the end, because you then have to tackle a lot of other things. You need to maybe work on strategy, you need to work on a roadmap, you need to work on this. So this gets tricky. It gets really tricky to allot capacity to work on operations, but there is a way to go about it. So let's dig a little bit into that third option. And this, as I said, is the usual situation, because we are in this stage where ResearchOps is not like a staple position in companies. So we don't have a lot of specialist roles established, especially in smaller companies. I mean, of course, large or very mature companies do have that, or most of them have. But when you're starting out, or when you have like less companies and smaller companies, it's not really the case. So let's dig deeper into this. So have 3 things or 3 tips if you want to split the load for operations within your team. The first one is compromise on your allocated capacity. As I said before, you need to decide, okay, how much time can we dedicate to operational work, to ResearchOps? Let's say we say, okay, 25% of our quarterly capacity or 30% of our quarterly capacity is going to be dedicated to this project. Could be, I gave you a couple of examples. You can work on, I don't know, the tooling, you can work on participant management, you can work on knowledge management, you can work on creating templates, training other people in research. You choose. Also, depending on your context, you can choose. But what happens usually is that those are more nice to haves than must haves. And there's always, and this is the usual situation, there's always something burning, and there's always some pressing question or some pressing project that will most likely force your hand out of operational work. This is the first thing that gets deprioritized, and that's the sad, if you want. I want to say sad because this is very subjective, the sad reality. When we have, okay, I have project A, B, and C, and then I have project D is ResearchOps, then something else comes completely ad hoc and makes you drop that. So be mindful when deciding on working on research operations to compromise on your allotted capacity and go with that. Okay, 25% of my time is for ops, and then I'm not negotiating that. I'm fully putting the bet here, because this is like the tree. It's a long-term game. So that's the first tip that I gave you. If you are going to split the load between other researchers or other roles at your company, be strong and be strong. No, be pretty adamant on how much time you dedicate to this, because it's more, this conversation is more like, okay, we would like to build this, but then in reality this rarely happens. The second tip that I have is set the right expectations. So operational work is not something that happens or that shows results overnight. If you streamline your participant management in Q1, you'll probably be thankful in Q4, but you will probably won't be super thankful in Q2, if you know what I mean. Same with a repository. If you build a repository, it will probably take you quite some time to first set the structure, have people adopt it, have research in, start triangulating. So you will see the benefits of what you build later on. I mean, and going back to one of the points that I make here, we're building the foundations here. So it's important that the foundations are strong, but the foundations are not the whole building. You cannot say, okay, we put these bricks here, the flat looks nice. We need to be mindful when we say we're going to spend this time here. And also we need to set the right expectations that this work might not be like super straightforward and super easy. Maybe you need to spend, as if we go back to the example, 25% of your capacity, you need to spend it maybe 3/4 working on the same thing if it's huge, if it's a large project. So you need to set the right expectations with your team or with your manager or with other teams in that regard. Okay, fine, we invest here, but we probably need to wait some time till we see results. And this takes me to the next point, which is plant seeds and water your sprouts. What I mean with this is that some of your work will happen in Q1, and then you will see the benefits later on. And you need to slowly work on it or a bit every time, and you will see results later on. These are a lot of ResearchOps work is long-term game, because the more people use it, and we go back to the thing, as research happens, you have many things around and many things going on and many things floating. So if you put the foundations right, then you'll start seeing the sprouts, and then you'll start seeing the results. So expectations and use this analogy that can be pretty useful. We need to plant the seeds and then wait. So it's not time wasted, it's not effort wasted. You will see later on. Also be clear up front with your manager and the team on this. So let's say you say, okay, fine, great, I have capacity, it doesn't matter how much, to work on ResearchOps. So how do I pick things to work on? Well, in terms of topic, this could vary depending each case and so on. But today, what I'm going to show you is it's a very simple and very kind of bare bones kind of workshop that I run to then define what I would work on when I need to build operations, whether this is a team of 3-4 people, or maybe this is something where I'm the first researcher and I only have half of my time to work on this. This is how I would go about it. So the first thing that I would advise you is that try to, in a really simple, straightforward way, map out how is research happening, particularly if you want, how is moderated research happening, if there is any. If not, well, do with unmoderated, you name it. But if there's any research happening, how does it go? Do you reach out to customers? How is that happening? Do you send them a link? Do you give them incentives? Where do you put the research output? Start asking these questions. If you don't have a research team, ask if there's any research happening. Most likely there is some research happening. And as I said before, it's not the fact that there are no researchers involved doesn't mean there's no research. There must be someone talking to customers some way, even informally or somehow. So try to find that information. So try to, paint this picture, This is pretty much the case when you work with a design or a product team. There is some research happening, so you can map this out with them. So you can organize a 1 hour workshop, 1 hour and a half workshop, and say, okay, let's go step by step. So you write each of the steps with as much detail as you can. So for example, here I put very broad steps, but sending recruitment emails might mean getting the list from data, getting the emails ready or the templates ready, and then using the CRM tool. So it might be smaller steps or more precise steps. I just kept it high level just for the sake of the exercise, but try to be as specific as you can and put them all here in this line in the middle. So once you've done that and you pretty much have the picture, then you should ask the team, okay, how are these things? Are they? If you see there's a smiley face up there, so it's like, is this working well? Are we happy with this? Are we struggling? And you move it down. So you need to place the stickies depending on how are we faring in those areas. So if it's pretty straightforward and pretty easy for us to create a link and give out incentives, it will go up. If not, it will go down. So try to assess where are we struggling the most, and then focus on the ones where we are struggling the most. If giving out incentives is a nightmare, then that's probably one of the first things you need to work on. So try to identify everything that's down and then follow everything that's a little bit down or in the middle. And then, the other ones just like, okay, fine, it's going great. Maybe at some point, if you have everything above the line, you can think of polishing or even improving how the things are even made. So focus on the ones you have down there. And then there's this part where you translate these problems to solutions. So if you have issues sending recruitment emails, then you should change it to, okay, we need to automate email campaigns. It can also happen that, let's say you have problems crafting the profiles you need to reach out to. They can be because of many ways. You can also do this middle step. Okay, we really need to work on the consent, or we cannot find the emails easily. It could be, okay, fine, we need to organize our database. It could be that you have maybe one pain point, so you wanna, let's say you wanna work on the how do participants sign up because you have low response rate, or because you don't have good incentives. It could be two solutions. So try to then, from those steps that are a bit problematic, try to go from there to potential solutions or potential actions that you will need to take, and work with those actions or those solutions, as I said. And here, solutions, and then from solutions to actions. I know the wording might be a little bit off. I'm sorry, because they're similar words, but I think you can follow my logic. So you get the problem, then you go to a particular solution, and then you move this to how are we going to work on that. So after you have this, or everything translated or written as solutions, you can use this impact effort matrix and say, okay, these solutions, how are we faring in terms of effort? Are these high effort, low effort? This could be super impactful. This could be not so impactful. So try to, use this 2x2 matrix and move things around and see, okay, in which of these 4 quadrants should we place this thing? Is creating a panel impactful? Yes. Is it a lot of effort? Probably yes. Okay, fine, we put it there. So getting more budget for incentive, is it impactful? Well, maybe yeah, because we get more people to sign up. Okay, is it hard? No, we just need to ask the manager for more money. Well, actually, I don't know if that's hard or easy. I think that depends on the context. In some contexts, maybe this is the harder thing. Okay, get more budget. But you know what I mean. So try to assess where do these things go, or where should they go. So once you have this, then you can sort them out by effort. Okay, low effort and high effort, right? Just the impact, you can also put the impact up and the impact low, but try to keep it like this by effort. And then once you have it like this and you have all the solutions, you can then move to actions. This is what I mean with actions. You can also say make it more granular, or make the steps smaller. So let's take the high effort one, which is automate email campaigns and creating a participant panel. So if you want to automate your email campaign, the steps might be, these are just like, I'm jamming with this, these are kind of examples. So could be, let's say you don't have a CRM tool, so you need to evaluate one. You need to define the budget that we're going to spend maybe for the tool or overall for the incentives or something. You can maybe create some automation tutorials or connect to mailing lists. You start to, what does automate email campaigns mean? And then divide it as granular as you can in smaller actions. Same with the panel. Maybe creating a panel means you need to create the TNCs, maybe a landing page or a Google form, or use a tool that you have, or streamline or work with a CRM tool, or create a campaign. So there are many things that a research or creating a panel entails. So try to be as granular as you can. And then this is how you can go about it. So you can pick something that was not so that didn't require a lot of effort. If you go back to this part, remember getting budget and organizing the database we consider as low effort. And we broke down the high effort ones into smaller bits. And when you plan in your quarter, you can mix a little bit of both. You can mix the lower effort and the smaller bits of the high effort. And why do I do this? The reason is that big or large efforts normally require, well, it's pretty obvious what I'm going to say now, but require more effort, but also require more time. And they're usually huge things. So if you wait till you have the right capacity to tackle everything there, probably you won't make it. And also many of the things are layered. For example, let's say you need to create terms and conditions. So you need to create maybe a first draft, you need to run it by legal. Legal has to give approval or maybe give comments. So these are things that, it takes time because it involves other teams, have a lot of dependencies. So same with the landing page, maybe you need to design a page with together with the design team, and then go to a PM and say, okay, do we develop this? How do we embed it in our site, and so on? So this will take time. So that's why I talk about this, tackling this in a bit more atomic or a bit more granular. This is going back to what I said. You need to plant those seeds and water the sprouts. These are smaller seeds and smaller sprouts. So I would advise you to kind of plan your roadmap a little bit between what requires little effort, and I consider, let's say, quick wins, plus things that are big wins, but it will take you long. That way you can bet in the long term, and you can play this long game, which is actually what ResearchOps in the end is about. So these things take time and show results in time, but the results are pretty powerful and pretty exponential. And we set your team up for success. Thank you. Here, if you wanna scan it, you will have my details. If you wanna, maybe, we have time for Q&A now, but in case you wanna reach out, if you have any comments, any questions, or anything, feel free to reach out. Here you can find my LinkedIn profile, my email, my website, and everything.